Welcome back to Forward Together, Adelante, Juntos. We're excited to be with you today to share the powerful organizing of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, as we continue to build a fusion movement to confront the interconnected evils of systemic racism, poverty, militarism, ecological devastation, and the distorted moral narrative of white Christian nationalism.
Bienvenidos de nuevo a Forward Together, Adelante Juntos. Estamos felices de estar con ustedes hoy para compartir el poderoso trabajo organizativo de la campaña de los pobres, un llamado nacional al renacimiento moral. Mientras continuamos construyendo este movimiento de fusión para enfrentar los males interconectados del racismo sistémico, la pobreza, el militarismo, la devastación ecológica y la narrativa moral distorsionada del cristianismo blanco.
In this episode, since it's May and following May Day, we're going to talk about organizing poor and low-income workers.
En este episodio hablaremos sobre el 1 de mayo y la organización de los trabajadores pobres y de bajos ingresos.
But before we dive in with our guests, we want to share a few highlights from our campaign since the last episode.
Sí, antes de comenzar la conversación, vamos a compartir con ustedes aspectos destacados que han tenido lugar desde nuestro último episodio.
In April, the campaign released a groundbreaking report about the pandemic. While the virus did not discriminate, our society and policies did. The report revealed that people in poor and low-income communities died at nearly twice the rate as people in wealthier communities. During some waves, up to 5 times more. Vaccination status alone did not account for this divide. It was a policy choice.
El lunes 4 de abril, la campaña dio a conocer el reporte marcando la intersección de pobreza, raza y el COVID-19. Nuestro innovador informe sobre la pandemia revela que si bien es cierto que el virus COVID-19 no discriminó, nuestra sociedad y nuestros políticos sí lo hicieron. El reporte muestra que las comunidades pobres y de bajos ingresos experimentaron tasas de mortalidad 2 veces más altas que las comunidades más ricas y hasta 5 veces en diferentes momentos de la pandemia. El informe expuso que estas muertes también fueron una opción política.
On April 11th, faith leaders, organizers, and poor and low-wage workers came together and marched on Wall Street, one of many stops on a mobilization tour leading up to our historic Assembly and Moral March on Washington on June 18th.
Y el 19 de abril, líderes religiosos, organizadores, trabajadores pobres y de bajos ingresos, nos reunimos en el distrito financiero de Wall Street, aquí en la ciudad de Nueva York, en una marcha moral y una reunión masiva. Este encuentro fue parte de una gira de movilizaciones que la campaña de los pobres está realizando por todo el país, mientras invitamos a la histórica asamblea y marcha moral en Washington, D.C. el 18 de junio.
Let's take a look at that powerful day of action.
Vamos ahora a ver un corto video que resalta este día poderoso de acción.
I'm tired of this country saying that ain't nothing we can do. And some people have thrown up their hands and said that justice is a lost cause. But I need some people that will seek good and not evil. I need some folk that will work it out in the public square.
The reason why we're here today is because we are part of the launching of the June 18th National Assembly on Washington. And it's our goal to try to liberate those that are held in bondage.
We are going to be involved in the big Washington demonstration. We're hoping to bring at least 50 of our sisters and associates there.
Oh boy, are they going to be folks going down.
These are actually a bunch of my friends. We're all high school seniors. We're from DC.
Healthcare bills go up and up. We are just cogs. We have no rights.
I just got into an apartment after being homeless for 3 years, and honestly, not having a place, not having a space to live, that's your own, really does something to your mind. In a country as rich as ours, there's no excuse to have so many people on the street.
Hello, Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival!
We need clean housing.
went down to the rich man's house. I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity.
In front of the New York Stock Exchange, because too many of our lives have been traded and lost here. So let's tell them what we want. We want justice. We want living wages. We want health care. We want education. We want voting rights. What do we want? When do we want it? We are marching. We are marching. We are marching. Here we come. We are marching. We are marching. We are marching. Here we come.
We've got to make sure that America sees and hears the faces.
Hello, my name is Josh Coppola. I'm queer, I'm poor, and I'm also a tri-chair of the Maine Poor People's Campaign.
That's it.
I moved today to speak by both grief and joy. I'm saddened by this distorted moral narrative of Christian nationalism, and I'm grieving because this rhetoric can spur violence, and in many states, violent policy, and our siblings are already hurting. And if division is what they seek, then what we need to do is come together. And that's why I'm moved by joy today, and that's why I'm getting all my people to the Moral March in DC and that mass assembly. Because I love myself and my community. I'll see you all and yours in DC on June 18th.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Volney Gordon. I'm from Vermont, from with the Vermont Workers Center and the Vermont Poor People's Campaign, but I became an expert in poverty right on these very streets. Having experienced everything that poverty had to offer, like everything from incarceration to a physical illness that almost took my life. The ruling class doesn't want us to strategize across lines of division, because our strength, the strength of our class, of working people, is what powers this machine. I want to see y'all in Washington on June 18th. Forward together. Bless.
We got to get outside of the church. We got to get outside of the Union Hall. We got to get in the street. The abolitionists had a meeting. That's how they overcame slavery. They tell me Sojourner Truth and women's rights folk had a meeting. They tell me that down in Montgomery, Alabama, they had a meeting. Everywhere change has ever come, the rejected came together and had a meeting. Are you ready?
Let's talk about today. Today, we're going to hear from campaign leaders here in New York and across the country about their continued fight for workers' rights and dignity.
Hoy vamos a oír a líderes de la campaña aquí en Nueva York y alrededor del país hablar sobre el significado del 1 de mayo, o el Día Internacional del Trabajo, y la lucha histórica de los trabajadores han librado y continúan librando para obtener y mantener la dignidad y los derechos básicos.
You're also going to want to stick around for an incredible musical performance from Daniel Blake of the Hudson Valley PPC.
También no querrás perderte la increíble presentación artística de Daniel Blake de la campaña de los pobres en Hudson Valley.
Let's start the show.
Yes.
We had a crisis. A lot of children are going to their bed hungry. Our brothers and sisters are sleeping on the streets.
Va a deportarme y separarme de mis hijos.
I can be deported and separated from my children.
The reason that we deal with poverty is because of a failure to invest in the things that all people need to live decent lives.
We're joined today by three incredible guests. We have from Domestic Workers United NYC, Vanessa Bretas. We have from Ithaca, New York, Starbucks worker organizer, Stephanie Heslop. And all the way from Baltimore, Maryland, from United Workers, Michael Coleman. Thank you all so much for being here. It's great to have you. So we're obviously talking about organizing, worker power. We're in May, following May Day. Vanessa, I wanted to start with you and maybe just ask you to share a little bit about how you came to be a part of Domestic Workers United, NYC, and why being part of this organization matters to you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me. I've been nannying in New York City for over a decade, and after 3 particularly brutal summers of live-in nannying on Fire Island, I was like, I am not being treated well. And the people I know who are domestic workers are really not being treated well. And so I just started like journaling about my experience and researching domestic workers in general, domestic worker groups, trying to get involved. Then in 2020, I found DWU's email online, and I got a call from the brilliant, magnificent Christine Lewis, who is one of DWU's foundational members. And, you know, we had this long phone conversation, and I just learned about them, and I was like, this group is the real deal. You know, it's 100% worker led. It is non-hierarchical. You know, they just have always been showing up for community. And at the time, I was struggling with my employers, who up until then I thought were not that bad because my employers before were so horrible. But, you know, I got swept up in that whole "you're part of the family" narrative, which I think is what a lot of domestic worker employers do to isolate us and manipulate us. And, you know, I learned the hard way that it's never true. You're not part of the family. And, you know, their true colors really started coming out during the pandemic. And DWU was really there for me to help me negotiate for PPE, for basic safety needs, for a salary. And I would have never been able to do that without DWU. And then last year, they fired me out of the blue, you know, and essentially kind of ghosted me and hired somebody else who I'm sure they were paying less than me because, you know, at this point I'd been with them for 5 years and had been making salary, and I don't think they wanted to pay a domestic worker a salary anymore, as I've been told by former employers, you know, that we don't deserve that. And it's horrible. And so, you know, DWU had luckily advised me to get on the books during the pandemic so that I could be eligible for unemployment, which a lot of domestic workers are not. And then DWU gave me financial love offerings, no questions asked. We connected about the pain of, you know, being discarded and made to feel invisible in the lives of these children who we really come to love. And, you know, you're just thrown away, and it's really painful. And this was after 5 years. You know, some nannies get discarded like this after 10, 13, 17 years, especially during the pandemic. You know, we don't get severance, or it's some like pathetic scraps that these multimillionaires, you know, want us to be grateful for. You know, they're paying us poverty wages so that they can do their cushy capitalist jobs and make millions. And that's why DWU is important, you know, because we're left alone in their homes and we're being exploited with no recourse. You know, we don't have unions. We don't have HR departments in someone's living room, you know, and not that, you know, HR helps people really.
Right, and I think,
but yeah.
and I think, and for, you know, I'm sorry that you had to experience that, and I'm sure a lot of what you're saying through your experience is resonating with our other guests, even in organizations with HR, as you point out to. But I think being able to come together and form a group so that individuals are not isolated, as you say, is just such a core part of what we talk about when we're talking about organizing and coming together. And so, Stephanie, Starbucks, it's obviously gotten a lot more sort of national attention perhaps than a lot of other organizing campaigns, but I imagine a lot of what we were just hearing about resonates with you. And so I'd love to hear from you what your experience has been like, and why you think the Starbucks organizing union campaign has so resonated across the country.
Yeah, thank you. It definitely did resonate because I think the pandemic was a big a big part of it. I started working at Starbucks in October, so I wasn't there for all of that. But I think that for a lot of workers who've been there before, who had been, very loyal, very hard workers, and they saw very clearly during the pandemic that loyalty did not go both ways. So I think that was a big part of it. And also for us here in Ithaca, we were the first city to be 100% Starbucks stores unionized, which we're very proud of. But we have to give a ton of credit to the workers in Buffalo because they really paved the way. And when Buffalo went public, I think that that a lot of wheels turning in people's heads. And then when they won, that was huge for us, seeing that other people doing our jobs, people like us, that they did it. I think that was, super inspiring. And, it's obviously, set something off all over the place. And it's, beyond even Starbucks, workers at all these different places that are organizing, I think are really inspiring and motivating each other and supporting. And it's just, makes me really happy to be a part of it. I'm a barista at the Starbucks here, if I didn't mention that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it shows what's possible, and then that wave spreads. As you mentioned, Ithaca won a historic victory recently, which became the first city where all the Starbucks in the city all voted to unionize, and so just congrats to you. And it's great to see everyone here together, sort of learning from one another, because I think that's what's so important about this collective action. So Michael, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how this works, and ask how you go about organizing workplaces and various industries.
Well, I will start by saying, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Great. By saying that United Workers isn't a union, but we are a human rights organization. So we organize around human rights values. Work was definitely one of those values. And so just to give you a little background, I came into the United Workers through a campaign at Camden Yards. So this is the stadium of the Baltimore Orioles, right? The great Orioles, woo!
I'm a Blue Jays fan, but intra-division rivalry aside, go on.
I still got love for you.
All right, likewise.
But, so yeah, as a day laborer there, I experienced a lot of some of the same atrocities that was spoken of earlier. There's always this talk of we're a family. We will take care of each other, but we all know that is definitely not the reality, right? I was instructed to eat my lunch in the restrooms that we was charged with cleaning, right? Or taking our lunch breaks. If we didn't want to eat in the restrooms, we had to go to the basement of the stadium, which took a lot of time because we couldn't use the elevators. So we had to walk the concourse all the way down to the basement level, which took up all of your time. So just things like that really angered and frustrated the workers. And fortunately, United Workers was able to recognize the atrocities happening there and begin to organize. I came in toward the end of that campaign where we actually won a living wage for the day laborers. And before we moved on to the next campaign, we wanted to make sure we secured the rights of the workers there. So we asked the a union to actually step in, and we was able to organize and unionize that stadium. But as I mentioned earlier, we are not union organizers, right? Despite our name being United Workers. So there was atrocities happening in other places. So we was able to leave that location and start to organize in the harbor, which is a big tourist area in Baltimore. And then from there, step into the communities and do door knocking and canvassing with the actual residents of Baltimore. You know, they were experiencing things with like evictions, not being able to get access to healthy and affordable food. You know, there's a lot of food deserts in Baltimore. So just being able to, you know, recognize the needs of the people because we recognize by the people. You know, I am the very person that I seek to organize. You know, United Workers focus a lot on leadership development, meeting people where they are, and then building on wherever they are, just deepening their political understanding of the landscape of our society, and kind of, I guess the first step is relating. You know, just being able to, I can relate to you guys up in New York because you're facing the same issues. You know, would you guys be interested in hearing about environmental injustice? Of course, because you guys have it. You know, we breathe the same air, right? Or clean air is a necessity for all living things. So just recognizing how things connect with each other, the issues connect with each other, and being able to relate with people with a focus of leadership development, you know, is something that's in deep practice at United Workers. Also collaboration. You know, we look to connect with any and everybody who shares our vision and values.
And I think that that's all so important and powerful, and so much of it comes from, as you were saying, almost an identity shift where you understand as a worker, you can also be an organizer, and you're in community and in collaboration with other people and other fronts of struggle who may not be doing the exact same job as you, but who are facing issues and atrocities, as you say, that are interconnected. And I think so often, you know, there's power in dividing people. And so when people come together, you're able to confront that power. And one way that happens is the language. And so I just want to talk briefly again to Stephanie about Starbucks sort of referring to their employees as partners. And there's a lot of language that's put out there about how everyone's a partner in this company together. But then when push comes to shove, suddenly we're not all partners. And I wonder just how your experience has been seeing what sort of the company's response has been to the unionization effort, and what that tells you about the importance of unions in the first place.
Yeah, it's pretty absurd that they refer to us that way, because it's absolutely not a partnership, right? Like, we don't have a say in things really. And, you know, since we went public and then won our union, they have been coming down hard on us. Several people at my store have quit because they weren't, you know, we haven't been getting the hours that we need. And I think, you know, that's absolutely intentional, a way to like starve people out basically. And it's just, it shows, you know, what this is really about, right? But it's hard, like, that they're to know that they're deliberately inflicting, you know, stress and economic, you know, hardship on people who are already poor. It's gross.
It reveals, you know, the true colors, as Vanessa was saying earlier. It also is illegal, I should point out, and the NLRB is actually looking into this for once, which is really good. But Vanessa, I wonder if you could talk briefly about, even in the face of maybe some of that retaliation that one might experience if one organizes, why you found that was still the right thing to do. And especially in the context of domestic work, domestic workers were left out of the New Deal. And so I'm wondering if you could talk just briefly about sort of what that legacy means for domestic workers today, and why then it's so crucial to keep up this incredible fight that you're a part of.
Well, I think it's no news to anyone that this country is white supremacist, racial capitalist. You know, I think the New Deal wanted to elevate white people into the middle class, and so many folks were left out. And I think you know, the legacy in that is slavery. And I think you know, domestic workers, farm workers, sex workers are still left out of labor rights laws because of this legacy. And I think, you know, centering the most marginalized is like always what is important and what DWU has always been doing. And I think, you know, historically, when domestic workers join together and go on strike or other tactics, you know, things change because nothing can happen in this world without domestic work. You know, we saw that during the Montgomery bus boycotts. Domestic workers, Black female domestic workers were on the front lines there, and of the civil rights movement, of other historical uprisings. I think, you know, it's just really important to keep these movements super grassroots, like both Michael and Stephanie were saying, about the people, for the people, led by the people, because we do have the power, you know.
And on that,
yeah.
I just, that's amazing. We're running out of time, unfortunately. So Michael, I just wanted to give you the last word to talk about people power and give our viewers, you know, something to be hopeful about as we have this opportunity to talk to the three of you incredible worker organizers to see what's possible out there when people come together.
Well, thank you. The people is the power, right? There is so many people experiencing these issues that those people become the sleeping giant. And the sooner we can organize and wake up this giant, the sooner things will change on a systemic level throughout our society, right? I'm always hopeful when I engage with someone new and they express feeling, you know, lonely or helpless, only to end up becoming a leader, right? And start organizing their peers. That is a very exciting transformation to witness. And that's what drives me and keeps me motivated, in addition to looking around at my own family, right? Again, I am the very person that I seek to organize. It is crucial that we are able to organize through the different barriers, you know, age, race, religion, location, job, or political affiliation. When we're able to bring people together, we're able to shift things in a way that's more beneficial to the people. You know, right now we live in a system where it only benefits those who are wealthy, you know, that 1% of the 1%, so to speak. But I feel like it's time for things to shift and change, and joining the march on June 18th is part of that, you know, and it's very important. I'm gonna say this before we end, but it's important for people to understand that this march is not the all in all, right? This is the beginning. This is the accumulation of people being tired and, quite frankly, pissed off of how they've been treated, you know, in this country.
And so I look forward to
get down there, make the noise, but then continue to build and engage.
That's right. This is just the start. So Michael, Stephanie, Vanessa, thank you all so much. And all of you out there, awake the sleeping giant within you, as Michael said. And we'll see you out there on June 18th. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much.
Bueno, como dijimos al principio, ¿verdad? Hoy estamos hablando sobre la organización de los trabajadores, resaltando el 1 de mayo o Día del Trabajo. Y en esta sección ahora vamos a hablar con 3 mujeres poderosas que hacen trabajo de organización comunitaria. Son mujeres también ellas trabajadoras. Pues tenemos a Kyla Kellekian. Ella está en Syracuse y trabaja con el New York Immigration Coalition. Karina Tiburcio, aquí en Manhattan, y está con la organización NICE. Y ahorita vamos a saber qué significa NICE. Kenia Alcocer es una de las líderes de nuestra campaña y con el movimiento de Unión de Vecinos, con la organización Unión de Vecinos en Los Ángeles, California. Bienvenidas y gracias por estar con nosotras hoy aquí.
Buenas tardes, muchas gracias.
Siempre que hablamos...
Hola, gracias por tenernos.
Good. Nos gusta
Buenas
siempre
tardes.
preguntar, gracias, nos gusta siempre preguntar, ¿qué las trajo al movimiento de, organización comunitaria, el activismo? ¿Qué fue lo que te impulsó a seguir ahora en estas luchas? Empezamos con Kyla.
Pues sí, pues gracias por tenerme. Lo que me trajo a organizar, pues yo también fue una trabajadora, no una trabajadora agrícola, sino una trabajadora en las tiendas, como de ventas. También yo crecí, como soy tejana, yo crecí como entre medio de dos mundos, ¿no? Y fue algo como pues muy difícil creciendo con una mamá soltera que tenía que luchar, siempre luchar para tener nuestro espacio y estar tomado en cuentos, ¿no? Entonces, cuando vi que pues mis experiencias hay de muchas, ¿no? No solamente mis experiencias, pero mis compañeros, ¿no? También que son inmigrantes o mis familiares, que están teniendo tantos problemas también, encima de que ya son trabajadores, ¿no? De pues pocos recursos, pues todo eso te activa, ¿no? Y es como tienes que responder, si yo tengo un poco de privilegio, yo tengo que hacer algo para mi comunidad, y eso es lo que me trajo a pues este movimiento, y pues ahora es mi trabajo.
Qué bien. Karina, ¿qué nos puedes decir de tu experiencia y qué te trajo hasta aquí?
Buenas tardes a todas y mexicanas todas.
Sí.
Mexicanas al poder. Gracias por tenerme principalmente. Yo soy voluntaria de la organización NICE. NICE es una organización sin fines de lucro que se enfoca en ayudar a todo inmigrante, todos sin distinción, en el robo de salario, en cositas así, que todo el mundo pasa trabajo. Yo empecé con ellos como voluntaria porque yo soy trabajadora de la limpieza y de construcción, y en algún momento me tocó pasar a el robo de salario, y entonces conociendo la historia de muchas personas, que usted se mete allí con la organización y se da cuenta que hay mucha discriminación por el hecho de ser hispano, por el hecho de no hablar inglés. Entonces eso me hizo como que juntarme a ellos para ayudar a más personas que en realidad sí pasan más trabajo que uno. Pues básicamente eso fue lo que me metió a ser miembro de NICE.
Gracias, qué bien, cuando partimos de nuestra propia experiencia, ¿verdad? Kenia, ¿qué nos puedes decir sobre esa pregunta?
Hola. Pues mire, como inmigrante indocumentada, pues creo que no tenemos otra opción más que organizar por nuestros derechos, especialmente cuando nuestros derechos están siendo pisoteados. A mí lo que me incitó involucrarme fue ver las injusticias, ver cómo la gente estaba perdiendo sus viviendas, ver cómo nuestros trabajos nos explotan, y pues más que nada también la necesidad de buscar que estudiantes indocumentados como yo tuviéramos acceso a una educación. Entonces esto es lo que me motivó, y este trabajo y la comunidad es lo que me mantiene, ¿no? en la lucha.
Gracias. Sí, yo siempre cuando hago esa pregunta siempre tengo que decir, ¿no? Que como mujer negra y pobre, y también con ciertos privilegios en otras áreas de la vida, como decía ella, el ayudar, no solamente ayudar, pero comprometernos con estas luchas es tan importante. En este mes estamos resaltando la historia de la lucha de los trabajadores por sus derechos, que sabemos que ha costado tanto. ¿Qué forma creen que ustedes están tomando esas luchas hoy? ¿Cómo se están organizando desde sus respectivas trincheras? Kayla, con los trabajadores de farm workers, los agrícolas que trabajas en Nueva York.
Pues antes de que llegué a la coalición de inmigración de Nueva York, yo era contratada para trabajar en el Centro de Trabajadores de Nueva York Central. Fui contratada para trabajar con nuevos americanos, que son muchos refugiados de diferentes países, que ellos trabajaban más por la ciudad, en maquiladoras. Pero el base de miembros en este Centro de Trabajadores, la mayoría fue trabajadores indocumentados y más de rancho, porque yo vivo en Nueva York Central. Entonces, también encima de todo eso, estuvimos en el medio de, pues, esta administración tan cruel de Trump. Entonces, ahí estaba como la intersección entre, pues, la explotación del trabajador agricultura y también el ataque en las comunidades de migración. Entonces, pues tuvimos que responder y pues el otro trabajo que tenía, pues ya dijeron, no, hay que enfocar más en esta comunidad, ¿no? Es el base de los miembros. Pues el nuevo acuerdo que pasó hace años, décadas, dejó a muchos trabajadores afuera, ¿no? Sabemos que trabajadores agrícolas nacionalmente no tienen los mismos derechos de otros trabajadores. Y entonces, este sistema realmente fue para apoyar a, pues, los blancos o una orden del racismo, ¿no? Y el capitalismo. Entonces, cada estado, muchos de los trabajadores o industrias tienen que depender del estado a donde viven para luchar. Es mejor luchar por leyes locales o regionales más que nacionales, porque sabemos que eso realmente toma más décadas en lo que estamos todavía ahora. Entonces, nosotros aquí antes, los trabajadores agrícolas no tenían el derecho ni organizar. En la Constitución de Nueva York no tenían ese derecho. Y con eso también no era una ley que dice que pues ellos también tienen que tener un día de descanso, pagos extras, y pues el mínimo salario, ¿no? Entonces hay muchas cosas que pues no tenían el acceso a los mismos derechos de otras personas o otros trabajadores. Entonces, pues la organización a donde yo trabajé organizando, pues tantos problemas que tenían los trabajadores, y lo que es más triste es de que las personas que están trabajando en esta industria están tan aislados y están en áreas como súper rurales. No hay el movimiento de libertad a donde uno puede ir en otras áreas para buscar acceso a ayuda. Entonces realmente fue un gran problema nomás alcanzar a los trabajadores y documentar las historias por lo que estaban pasando. Entonces salió en 2017 un reporte de la industria lechera aquí en el estado de Nueva York, que fuera el más exploitativo y los trabajadores más vulnerables, ¿no? Por la inmigración y también simplemente que están tan aislados. Y entonces, después de eso, estuvimos organizando con trabajadores y desarrollando ese liderazgo que es tan importante, porque nosotros como organizadores simplemente somos el apoyo contratado, ¿no? Tiene que venir del pueblo y de los trabajadores en frente de todo. Entonces, mi compañero, el Crespín Hernández, que estoy muy honrada a conocerlo en esta vida, pues él puso su cara y la demanda contra el estado de Nueva York. Y entonces en 2019 el Corte Supremo decidió que pues es ilegal no darle el derecho al trabajador agrícola a organizar. Entonces, eso fue que realmente lanzó todo pues lo que siguió como el ley de los trabajadores agrícolas, que se llama el Farm Labor Fair Labor Practices Act, que es súper largo, ¿no? Pero es básicamente derechos mínimos o básicos como otras industrias a establecer pues a ese nivel para los trabajadores o establecer ese nivel de pues igualdad con otras industrias. Y eso ganó en 2020. Lo siento, 2019 y implementó en el 2020.
Sí, déjame permítame que te interrumpa. Precisamente los trabajadores agrícolas, ¿verdad? Son los más, como tú has dicho, uno de los sectores más vulnerables de la sociedad y de los más excluidos. Y precisamente ayer, porque no tenemos, precisamente estábamos con los trabajadores de Immokalee, que son de la Florida. Y ahí fue que conocimos a Karina. Así que, Karina, ¿por qué NICE, esta organización, está también apoyando a los trabajadores agrícolas?
Bueno, imagínense, sí, ayer tuvimos el placer de estar apoyando a los compañeros del campo de la Florida, que vuelvo y le digo, cuando uno escucha los tratos que tienen, uno se queda así como con la boca abierta. ¿Por qué NICE se decidió unirlo? Porque aunque es diferente campo, es diferente industria, peleamos por lo mismo, peleamos para que tengamos un sueldo justo. Ni siquiera estamos pidiendo más de lo que se es, estamos pidiendo un sueldo justo, así como aquí NICE ha peleado por los trabajadores de la construcción. Ellos, aunque son diferentes ramas, estamos peleando para que tengan lo mismo, los mismos derechos. Las mismas condiciones de trabajo, que no sean humillados, que las mujeres no sean abusadas sexualmente. No quiere decir que usted sabe que hay muchas formas de tener un acoso, no un abuso, un acoso. Aquí en la construcción también se ve mucho. Lo que pasa que a veces es el miedo de hablar, de decir hasta aquí es nada más. Entonces, por eso NICE se decidió a unir nuestras voces, porque acuérdense que unidos somos más fuertes.
Exacto. Precisamente eso es lo que decimos en la campaña de la gente pobre. Estamos creando este movimiento de fusión. Así que, Kenia, ¿por qué es tan importante que todos los trabajadores, toda la gente pobre, nos unamos y vayamos a Washington el junio 18?
Bueno, una de las razones más importantes, nosotros organizamos a inquilinos y hemos visto de que el acoso es en la casa con el dueño, el acoso es en el trabajo con tu empleador, el acoso es en la calle con la policía. Entonces vivimos constante acoso por ser pobres, por ser personas humildes, y eso es algo que tiene que parar. Entonces, esta marcha del 18 de junio nos está llevando a decir ya basta a todas las injusticias. Y vamos a luchar juntos para realmente empezar a pelear y a luchar por todos nuestros derechos, ya seamos inmigrantes o no. Una de las cosas que sabemos muy claramente es de que los papeles realmente cambian dos cosas en nuestra vida. Una, que podemos ir a visitar a nuestros familiares a nuestro país de origen, y el otro, que nos quita el miedo de ser deportados. Pero no cambia la condición de vida que tenemos en este país. Los trabajos todavía son trabajos mal pagados, las viviendas están en malas condiciones, y eso significa de que necesitamos luchar con todas las comunidades que están sufriendo en este país. Y realmente es que somos muchos, somos 140 millones de pobres y desposeídos en el país, que nos vamos a reunir en Washington, D.C., y vamos a estar viajando, nosotros desde California en autobús y en avión, y ustedes que están más cerca, pues una manejadita más ligera, ¿verdad? Nosotros quizás en el camino tenemos una semana, pero ahí vamos a estar.
Increíble. Todas las rutas conducen a Washington. Así que estamos seguros que Karina y también nos van a acompañar y Kyla en Washington. Entonces, yo creo que se nos ha ido el tiempo. Gracias por haber estado con nosotros y forward together, adelante juntos, ni un paso atrás. Sabemos que Kenia está organizando para la próxima movilización será en Los Ángeles y Kenia está organizando para eso.
Este lunes.
Así que
sí, este lunes a las 4 de la tarde vamos a estar aquí en Los Ángeles. Acompáñenos los que estén acá.
Estamos apoyando.
Desde lejos los estaremos apoyando.
Así mismo. Pues gracias por haber estado con nosotros. Bye bye.
Gracias a usted.
We have a crisis. A lot of children are going to their bed hungry. Our brothers and sisters are sleeping on the streets.
Va a deportarme y separarme de mis hijos.
I can be deported and separated from my children.
The reason that we deal with poverty is because of a failure to invest in the things that all people need to live decent lives.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Gracias a todos nuestros magníficos invitados.
Thank you to the amazing group here at MNN.
Y gracias por sintonizar nuestro programa.
Join us in mobilizing New York City, New York State, and communities across the country to come together in Washington, D.C. on June 18th.
Nos vemos en las calles, en la gira de movilizaciones a través de todo el país, con destino a Washington, D.C. el 18 de junio. Forward together.
Adelante juntos.
Ni un paso atrás.
Not one step back.
A powerful movement is rising across America.
From the Mississippi Delta to the Apache stronghold.
From the homeless encampments of Washington State to the coal fields of Appalachia of West Virginia.
We are the 140 million poor and low-wealth people in this country, and we are building the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival.
On June 18th, ahead of this year's midterm elections, while the Congress is still in session, we will hold a mass poor people's and low-wage workers assembly and moral march on Washington to arrest the attention of the nation, to put a face and a voice on poverty and low wages in this country.
This is a watershed moment for justice and democracy in America. There are those who say that transformative change isn't possible, but history teaches us that it is precisely in times like these that people must build a broad and deep movement from the bottom up.
We must compel this nation to repent, to lament, and to see the realities that have been hidden for far too long.
On June 18th, we will come together to lift the voices of the poor and low-wage workers who know that change is not only possible, it is essential for our survival.
We will make the connections to show how systemic racism, poverty, ecological devastation, the denial of health care, the war economy, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism and white supremacy are hurting us all. We will show the nation the faces of Americans who cannot afford to go back to normal.
We will detail the policies that can move us toward a society that works for everyone. And we will pledge to go home and build power for transformative change in this year's election and for years to come.
Because the question should have never been, how much will it cost to address poverty? The real question is, how much is it costing us not to?
Somebody's been hurting our people. It's gone on far too long.
And we won't be silent or unseen anymore.
Join us in D.C. on June 18th.
Build with us for a third reconstruction in America. Visit poorpeoplescampaign.org.